What's up, guys? Mikey in the building here. It's been a while. I haven't done videos in a while. I've just been so focused on myself, improving my edge, kind of grinding in other aspects of life, um, finishing up my degree, and this one, starting another one, deep diving into the book, studying, really going back of going back on months and months of my work and refining it, retuning it, staying in the groove of things. It's so important, guys. There's a lot of people, who kind of are all over the place, and I'm really trying to improve with these bigger thesis trades and kind of stay away from things that don't have a lot of liquidity and so on. So, how do I use this book for my pre-market checklist, right? Um, at any given moment, guys, I'm going to go through the scanners, whatever is gapping up, popping up. This is Friday's after hours, but I think there's a couple names on, let's just say like right here, GVH. Maybe this is a penny idea. This name looks like it's sold off, multiple gaps down. So maybe now I want to trade this for a bounce and see if there's like a gap fill idea right there. However, when I pull this on the book though, right, even when this opens up down here at 9:30, right up here, to me, this book is so offer heavy, and then continues just to get heavier and heavier as we start to pull back, right? There's really not a lot of bid support or bid pulls. Price action is not actually, there is no appetite, right? What I mean by appetite, there is no appetite for them to actually wanting to break out and test 35, 36, 37, 38. There's so much offer liquidity. And as there's some bids right here, we kind of can start seeing how this one pulls, lightens up. Now they finally sell into it. They're selling into this. It's bouncing, but there's no continuation. Right here looks like, a lot of hidden sellers. Price action stops again at this level right here. You can actually see a little more where the best offer tries to go. There is no real appetite, right? People are getting filled in between the spread. There's actually a little offer right here. Buyer comes. There's no continuation on this one. So I utilize this to go through this and say, okay, this is super offer heavy. There's really not a lot of buyers super interested in this. So I kind of stay away, right? So it helps me stay away from like not trading that one. Okay. So I'll go through the scanners, right? And I'll pop any name that pops up at pre-market gap list, and I'll pull up on the book, and then I'll see what kind of liquidity is on the book in the morning, right? Versus pre-market versus open bell. I think that's super, super important to kind of see how I'm going to trade a plan and look for dailies that could have more potential or bigger bounces, right? LCFY. This was another name traded Friday, right? This is a pre-market name, right? So now, if I pull that one up, now I can see how they traded this early in the morning, right? And as you can see, this one's super, super aggressive with a lot of bid follow-up, and then the bid actually starts to change later on up here, okay? Now, just for pre-market, just for pre-market sakes right here, this is a very aggressive, really, really aggressive push up. They have a lot of bid stacks following this up. You can see how bids are being pushed right here and pulled, push and pulled, push and pulled, push and pull. So they're being super, super aggressive on this one. Somebody wants to get this stock. They want it to actually get it really higher, and then to see how it's going to trade at open, right? You can see a lot of liquidity being pulled and pushed and pulled. As you can see, this little 10K, 13K guy continuously tries to run it up. All right. Now, if I understand that, right? I understand that going into open, and then if you just look right here, you can see how aggressive that bid prop was. Helps it get it really extended. It's always important to see what kind of daily we're trading. Recent activity was in this area, 769 previous VWAP. That's always nice to see right there. Now we can start to see how this trades at open. All right, this actually move right here was very similar to this move right here. There's a bunch of higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, and then now there's only a micro clear out right here. This is also a very aggressive pop just to get a micro clear out of the morning. All right, let's go pay attention up here. Now, actually, if you actually just saw this GVH book, right, that I showed, right, see how this offer, see how offers come in right over here, and then it starts to get more stacked, heavier and heavier and heavier. If we see this LCFY opening at the top of the range, doing these micro clear outs, tons of higher lows, starts to get super aggressive, doesn't really break out. Now as this tries to trap one more time longs, you can see how this book starts to get more offer heavy, right? You can see how they're stacking more liquidity right here, and this is now becoming really bearish, right? There's no difference of that GVH book and now looking at this LCFY book. All right, this is a good indicator for me to see that this is starting to get super, super heavy. All right, in order for this stock to rip up more after it's already made its huge move, it's gapped up a couple 100%. It's already done a micro clear out. It's trying to clear out again, does another micro clear out, fails. You can kind of see how, again, that move right here where this is very bid proppy, where they pull a bid, push it, pull a bid, push it. You know, it's bid prop. They're spoofing. They're getting it. You see aggressive buyers there supporting the stock, and then they eventually start to leave as this makes its move. You see it's starting to get a little bit thinner right here. Bids get sold into, offers come in. This becomes a very painted level right here. You can kind of see right here that buyers cannot get into control right here, and this fails to actually break out and go for another leg. All right, now we're starting to see this again. I wanted to show something else too. Rotations. There's a lot of guys who rotate stocks. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. I like to look for a nice rotation too, especially when a stock goes up a couple 100% and it pulls back. Sometimes there's more range for a better rotation than playing a name that only gapped up 60, 70% and then kind of looking for a bigger rotation out of that. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Some of those just make new highs by 20, 30% and then pull back and then kind of fade. I thought that this was great control right here, and they started to pull, and you actually see this offer here get shoved down right here, and they fill it, they pull back, and you start to see some better price action. Now, when I always look at where we could potentially bounce, I'm looking for particular areas where things broke down, right? To me, this is an obvious spot. If you missed this and didn't watch level 2 and weren't watching the stock, now I can pull this up and kind of see there's a lot of liquidity, sellers being absorbed. They try to stuff it, they swipe it, they absorb, and they finally, sellers get into control and break down this level. So to me, this is a big level, right? You could have done a couple things right here, right? You could have actually drew a zone maybe from here to here and then map that out. So now as this starts to bounce and rotate, we're looking for this level to reclaim. And this level actually fails right here. All right, you can kind of see that there is not a lot of bid follow-up, and if there is, it's almost very similar again to where you see some spoof bids come in, maybe some buyers willing to buy, support the stock, whatever it is, algos, and now we start to see it start to get a little bit thinner. We cannot retrace that level. This is that bounce right here, right? This is where it, failed to break down, and then finally broke down from this level. So just having a straight line, or just a box. I like to draw zones when I'm trading, but I would have drew it right here, and then right there, because this is also a level to get over. Draw that out. Boom. It kind of gives you an idea, right, of an area of interest. This is where it broke down. Let's see if we can at least attack, if you're looking on the 5 right here, can we attack these lower highs, maybe these? We actually get its first lower high break right here, pulls back, and then tries to retrace a little bit more. So to me, this is actually a great rotation if you're watching. This is about 25%. I'll take a nice 25% rotation, but then you have to start looking for the signs of weakness, right? Or signs of things that become bearish and things like that, right? So once this thing kind of fails stuffs right here, this starts to get heavy. You know, for me, I'm using the book 24/7. I'm using the book 24/7. You know, there's a clear offer right here. You can kind of see it has hard trouble getting over 1142s. And maybe if a bid came up, actually a bid did come up right here. You know, if this should have went, but the fact now that it's getting sold into, and now we're starting to get a little bit more heavier with offers, right? That's not a good sign. So that definitely would have got me out of the stock. So right now you see sellers in control again, selling through all the bids, right? This is also that previous area. So I always like to look for rotation wise for any area that failed or a particular lower high that I can go ahead and trade into. SVRE, actually, this is a great name. Love 5-figure trade. Friday, nice daily down here, right? Previous high volume day. So this name has actually been running pre-market and then failing and opening up and then failing again. So these levels come from pre-market, right? I think that's super, super important. Make sure you go back, right? They gap this up early in the morning, sells off, okay? Back day 611, another day, again, pop it up, sell it off, right? Sells off, tries to put in a lower high. So those levels are from those pre-market days, right? So trading this, there's a huge difference in that one, right? On Friday, that one actually started to crank during market hours. This is a nice sideways beaten down consolidated daily, and it finally actually catches. They actually had amazing bids on this book for that run. Okay, again, they actually had some nice bids on this when this actually started to take off. Spoof bids nonetheless that actually helped get this up there. They started to pull liquidity, pull it down, and you see buyers kind of slip right through that, remove that liquidity, and we start to go. Level 2, you had to be on that one with this one. Nice halt up out of the unhalt, kind of fails, and this is where it starts to get offer heavy, and then it holds back down, trades sideways, tries to rotate into a down halt levels right here actually. No level right there. Let's go look at that. That's the down halt level. This should have reclaimed. But again, looking for a nice lower high against previous failed structure, right? This tries a higher low, higher low, higher low. Higher lows get attacked. This tries to rotate into this structure and fails. You know, sometimes these lowers high can go a little bit higher. Sometimes they can go even a little bit more higher. It just depends, but it's really good to see where it tries to rotate and then look for the stall and then see what happens. This was micro swiping, right? Micro swiping means it pulls back, swipes up really fast. You have to be there a lifetime to see it. Where we get a nice micro swipe, but it's a very fast micro swipe and it kind of stalls, comes back, pulls back deeper. It's actually tried to rotate twice and still failed. 418s was a nice level and then 520s on that one. But yeah, good things on the book down here too. You know, it's really nice to see this false breakdown happen right here, and then a nice bidder shows up, right? Nice spots that can consolidate, you know, risking a few cents to make, you know, potentially, let's see how far we can go, right? 520s was a big level. You know, you soak down there, you're looking at almost like $2 a share, which is really nice. Nice little return on that one. Backside, failed rotation. Didn't really see a lot of bids come up on this one. I think that's super key, right? I thought this was nice too. I thought this was being controlled right here. So when they start to pull these offers and then there's no follow through to the upside, especially after a nice bid comes up here, That's a little concerning, right? Be wary of that. This other rotation again, tries right here. They did the same thing. They're so funny. And actually, they think they were slick because they were actually taking that off the book and then putting it onto a different exchange on level 2. Same thing though, right? So these areas where they're trying to control are important. This right here, it's starting to get very, again, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low. They removed this liquidity, but this should have went. But then you start seeing a lot of buyers are getting absorbed up here, and this is pretty market aggressive, right? You see buyers stepping up right here, and this should have went, right? This should have went, especially when they tried to throw a little bid up here. This should have went and actually retraced and went higher. But this is where we start to see some failed follow through right there. Looking left too. Utilize the book. Looking left. Any areas of previous interest or high volume liquidity kind of goes through there. You see, sometimes I even take my book and I'll squinch it, right? And I can see high volume, high volume, high volume. So when we start to rotate back into this area and it doesn't break out and there's some aggressive buyers and the buyers can't do their job, say you just soaked right here, 415s, and you're looking for rotations, 50 cents a share. It's a good idea to probably scale some, break even, go from there on that one. Another great thing about having the book, I always say this, is that, all weekend I studied all these names, went over all these names. This is WFF, nice China name, way different. AMX, AMIX was another one. Traded Friday. This one was nice. Nice rotations, good levels to go through. Another great daily. Nice slow, low volume sell off right here. Makes new lows. Try to trade sideways again. And actually gaps up and fills a nice, pretty gap. $2 was a good level right here from this previous day. And then actually started to trade decent volume. Had 43 mil for the day. Look left. There wasn't a lot of activity. This looks like a recent RS name too, because I have a lot of lines on that name. So that was a decent gap fill on volume. Abnormal volume coming in. All right, super, super important. Let's go look at this book. Just going over some stuff, like normal. This is definitely a nice spot right here. Previous areas of interest, guys, before I even go in here, they had this nice offer control. This offer 147 gets pulled. Buyers step up through that level, and you can start to see it take off. All right, this was a big level right here, right? So as this breaks out, pulls back, you kind of see some hidden sellers right here, some stall. This pulls back into this previous area and then continues to make another leg. All right. Again, too, there's no difference to me from this buy right here and then pulling back into these levels right here, consolidating and then breaking out. All right. Was super patient with this one. I really thought that this buy, particularly into down here, was really great because these 170s areas, again, book-wise, was a nice previous area, right? This should have broke down. Saw some bids get sold into, no continuation. Some bid pops up. Nice little book flip right here. Book flip, right? Meaning they break through this offer and immediately throw in a bid to help support price action. That's nice. And then whether it's a spoof bid or not, algo. That was a nice solid rotation right there, and actually does the same thing down over here. Right? They remove the liquidity on the offer side, holding it down. And then you see some bidder come in here, and actually some sellers got absorbed right here. This bidder holds up, and you kind of see this continuation for another leg, right? This was that previous high area, so this did a nice pivot. I know a lot of you guys trade pivots. You know, maybe you miss this move and you catch yourself a nice little 20-cent scalp. That's cool in that one. But from 170s to 230s was a nice return on that one. Kind of talked about a lot. Again, how do I use the book to just go over names? If I start seeing names that get really loose in the morning, actually keep that right there. Let's see, Buru. Buru, different daily, right? This 42 level was its previous high volume VWAP day, which traded 660 mil. You know, this would be a good example. You know, using the book, popping this up early in the morning and kind of seeing that. Look how offer heavy that gets eventually. It's another loose structure. You know, right in the morning, it breaks through this liquidity. It actually looks like someone knew something was coming out. They have 700K right here at 37 cents. Right? They remove that liquidity, and of course, this is nice. It hovers above that previous area of interest. But then going into open, the structure starts to get loose where it's like higher low, higher low, higher low, tries, consolidates. The 930 bell opens up, and now we're opening up at the top of the range. That's fine as long as that 42 is held, right? That did not happen over here. All right, in fact, this is what it looked like. It actually sold right through that level and then started to reject that level right here. So it was nice to be able to see that, and then as we start to pull back, right, over here, you see this shift. Now I'm really not interested in this because now we're starting to get super offer heavy. You know, they sell into this bid, tries to rotate. You can kind of see just, you know, now 42s, which is that level in that range. And now it doesn't have to be for me 100% dialed in on that specific 0.42 level. But I know in that level, that was a previous high volume VWAP day. So how are we reacting? Are we building bigger buyers? Is there a strong appetite right here on the best offer? And how are they attacking the best bids and selling into any potential buyers down here? All right, so that pretty much stays heavy. All right, and the book gets pretty heavy, just like GVH, just like the LCFY book. You know, it starts to get more offer heavy than there is with buyers. You know, that definitely has a lot to do with algo, how price action moves up or down. Super important to make sure that there is not a lot of dilution, guys. This small caps, dilution kings. It's the name of the game. All right, they're up, they pop, they sell off, they reverse split, they offer. Like, didn't we see like back to back to back offers? That was kind of nuts. Tons and tons of offers actually, over and over and over again. But yeah, let me move that. You know, INMB offered. You know, that was nuts, right? Look at that nice lower high rotation too, by the way. Let me wait until it stops tweaking. There we go. Right, nice lower high rotation. This could have went higher. You know, it tried to attack this pre-market lower higher here, but failed up right underneath it. If this would have broke out above it, I would have been looking for any areas of where these other higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low bid props happen. They crack it, becomes nice targets. Learn that from Jay. And then as it starts to rotate, this could have went a little bit higher. All right, INMB book. Super interesting. All right, same thing. They thought they were kind of slick. I botched this. I should have had a better short. But anyways, don't really short that much. Massive bid prop right here, 100K, right? They move it up here, right? A lot of it gets sold into. Price action does not break down. So there was that 100K bidder right there did save this from breaking down. As it starts to break out, there's that big stall. There's no more real big buyers stepping up. Just maybe some algo bids, small bids. And then eventually this book gets super heavy. Again, as it tries to rotate into that lower high, fails against underneath the structure, starts to get offer heavy, and then eventually drop an offering. and they send that thing all the way down here. Kind of nuts, right? Book gets super heavy again. Oh man, same stuff, just a different day, different name right there. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got, guys. Just, I pull these names up on the book, right? I already have a massive playbook. I go through my names. I see how things are trading. How did it get there pre-market? How is it structured? Is this my type of daily? I love playing bottomed out names, right? Bottomed out dailies, whether it's a window gap, sideways consolidation. I'm really getting locked in from Jay with these low floats and been actually making decent coin on these low floats. Need to get better, but the range on them is phenomenal. It's a lot different than me soaking a couple hundred K of pennies and then writing them out. Got to learn how to size into them like with proper risk management so I don't get bent trying to soak it when sometimes things can pull back a little bit further, right? But yeah, so you go through that, see how names are traded, loose, aggressive, how did it soak? I get to utilize the book. And then, this is great for midday, SVRE or like AMX pulled up. Didn't really start going until about 1400. So, all right, and just being patient, right? You got to be patient. Sometimes things don't pop up. They're not looking great. If names are opening up at like for instance, Buru, if they're going to open up at the top of the range, I'm more than likely not going to want to trade them. Why would I want to trade something that's super gapped, right? The only thing I did try was a little bit right here off that VWAP level, but once it started to stall and I saw bids get pulled and there was no continuation, I bailed, stopped, I waited for something, and then trading something like this that's already super extended, right? And how I got there. Stop tweaking, Schwab. Thank you. Right? This gets super extended. Interesting. In the morning, right? And then eventually, it's already made its clear out. Sorry, guys. This thing's tweaking. It's tweaking me out. Right here, and then it tries to do a little quick. It basically rips that open. I don't really like that. Maybe if we were trading sideways, we pop up a little bit and then it opens up down into like some nice zone and then curls. That'd be a lot better look. But I don't want to trade something that's already, this was very loose all the way up. Higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, and fails to break out and then tests that level with no real bid support. More than likely not going to trade that, so, on that one. WFF, China. You got to really trade this one. This is a nice liquidity trap. And then eventually, just sells all the way off again. It's just incredible. It does swipe out this liquidity and goes for, another 10 point, 13 point move. We've seen a lot of names do that too. And then it's also really nice to see how that trades off the book. Last one, and then I'm done. Been a long time. I think we're at 28 minutes. But yeah. Guys, I got a code in the description for you guys want to utilize the book, learn how to trade with it, see how liquidity is being used, pushed and pulled. This one was great, right even before this breakout. Sellers get absorbed right here, they get absorbed right here, and then new bidders step up right here and shove this right into a hole, and then into another hole, right? They actually downhold this. This should have broke down, but right out of the unhold, it starts to go chase after that liquidity and holds up again, right? That is just great, right? And then this is where we start seeing things start to really shift. At its unhold, it tries right here, fails, pulls all the way back, and then now we're starting to see a change in this book, right? Out of the unhold right away, there's offers holding this down, and now we're starting to see it chase that lower liquidity, right? Now we're start seeing, there is no appetite, no more appetite for buying, strictly for selling, and then kind of see this thing sell all the way down, right? All right, guys. Much love. Peace out, Mikey.